Hi there, and welcome to the latest edition of the Gersnet Weekly Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast, which is brought to you by fans for fans and where the content is absolutely free. It is episode 201 of the flagship show. I'm your host tonight. I'm Colin Armstrong. Say every week, guys, it's not just the pod that we do here at Gersnet. If you get yourself onto the website, you'll find the forums there. There's articles, there's a history archive on the website as well. Get yourself on that. And we'd also ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel and put the word out there on social media and stuff like that. Tell everybody that we're here. Before I get started, I'll have to mention one of our partners at Football Prizes. They're currently offering you the opportunity to win a Ryan Kent signed custom frames Rangers shirt. There's 149 tickets at £3.95 and it's 29th of September. That's this Wednesday. Yeah, so next week, this Wednesday, the draw is made. So if you fancy that, get yourself onto www.footballprizes.co.uk and have a wee look at that. So bring my guests in. We've got an extra guest tonight, so I'll go with the regulars first, and then I'll bring Adam in. So we've got David Fraser and Stewart Weir. David, how are you?
Evening, listeners. Evening, Colin. I'm not too bad. Just trying to get myself through the international break. Managed to take on the ladies on Tuesday night against Benfica. Unfortunately, they couldn't hold on and get a draw.
It's I was at Paul yesterday. I didn't see you. You know there, no?
I was indeed.
Were you in your usual spot?
I was in the centre. Well, maybe not since the time I bumped into you. No, my usual spot before lockdown. I was in the right in the halfway line in the enclosure.
Aye, because me and my mate walked around. We were sort of under just behind the Clydebank dugout, actually. I didn't really look over. I couldn't see you, so I must have just missed you. No bad game. Quite enjoyed it, must admit. Better than watching Scotland, that's for sure.
Not very better.
We've also got Stewart Weir joining us tonight. Hi, Stewart. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Just to correct you, the 29th of September is actually Thursday.
Is it Thursday?
Yeah, 29th of September in 2004, AC Milan beat Celtic by 3-1. Andrei Shevchenko scoring twice against Celtic on his birthday that year. So I just know that fact because a certain Colin Weir arrived the same day and for a split second almost was registered as Andrei Shevchenko Weir. But I managed to steer clear of that and therefore didn't incur the wrath of his mother. So no, everything's good.
Are you getting through the international break okay? You enjoying it? Or are you pissed off like the rest of us?
If anybody follows me on Twitter, they will know I have a stock Alan Partridge shrug of the shoulders. And last night kind of took the Tunnock's tea cake a wee bit because you'd all these people saying, wasn't it fantastic performance by Scotland? And then, of course, I was the killjoy who said, yeah, they're just running into decent form in time for Qatar.
Yeah.
So it's exactly where we are with Scottish football just now. It's like winning the sort of Gala Day tournament and think you've qualified for Europe. It ain't that. It ain't happening that quickly. So until such time we start qualifying again for World Cups, then I might take an interest thereafter.
I've got to be honest with you, me and my mate were talking about it yesterday. I went with my mate Paul to watch Pollock, as I said, and like he used to go to the Scotland games quite a lot. He was like, what is this Nations League? He said, I don't even know what it is. And I was kind of like, I don't either, to be honest with you. I don't pay that much attention. The only time I really pay attention to international football is when the big tournaments come along in the summer. I've got to say, I don't even think I'm going to be that interested in the World Cup this year either because it just feels like a bit of a shit show with it being in Qatar and being at Christmas and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, international football, not for me. But anyway, we'll move on. We'll move on to the rest of the show and we'll bring in Adam because we're going to talk first about Adam's book. It's Adam Thornton for the Hearts and Hand. The Heart and Hand podcast.
A different one.
that's a different podcast altogether. So, Adam, do you want to just give us a wee breakdown and what your book's about? And it's Gerrard's Blueprint's the name of the book. It's obviously focusing on Gerrard's time in the club, but I think it's looking more at the sort of tactical stuff behind what he and his team were doing.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, first of all. You're right. It's basically the 3 years, as I saw it, from when Gerrard took over until we won 55. the journey that it is the tactical evolution, but I guess also the journey the entire club went on. If we think back to the last game of the previous era, it was that 5-each draw with Hibs under Jimmy Nicholl in May 2018, which was chaos. So I think it's easy to forget sometimes how low things were at that point. Rangers had finished third 2 seasons in a row. That last starting 11 had Russell Martin, David Bates, Jason Cummings up front, Sean Goss, Jordan Rossiter, Jason Holt. That's me done. And then when we played Scoopy in Gerrard's first game, there's only 3 or 4 players that actually make the starting 11. Tavernier, Daniel Candeias, Jamie Murphy. Although there's obviously a few that aren't in the squad, etc. But it's a massive turnaround, even just in a summer. So I wanted to kind of talk about, I guess, where it came from, first of all. And then from there, the book's really split into 3 parts. First part's all about the sort of tactics and the methodology that Gerrard and Michael Beale, etc. put into place, their influences from Liverpool, obviously, but Michael Beale's case, Chelsea as well, even further back, Bobby Robson, Johan Cruyff. Obviously, there's lots of Rafa Benitez and Gerard Houllier influences and what Gerrard does. So that kind of first part of it is all about that, all about setting it up. And then the second part is the sort of formation evolution. I think most people will probably still say, oh, he just played a 4-3-3 and that was it. There's kind of nuances in there that I kind of bring out in terms of how things changed, how players came in to the team that would then change how we play. And then the third part of it is all about the players, really. The evolution of Morelos, for example, in those 3 years was huge. What Tavernier was doing when Gerrard came in versus what Tavernier was doing when Gerrard left, there's a whole different tactical evolution there. So we kind of go through it in 3 parts, and that's broadly the setup of the book.
I mean, in terms of, obviously Gerrard's, he's been away about a year now, or whatever. A lot of chat around. He's slightly turned it around a wee bit at Villa at the moment, but there was a lot of chat. It looks like he was going to lose his job, and a lot of people were putting that down to Michael Beale moving on. Do you cover that in the book? I mean, his importance, Michael Beale's importance in the whole thing. Yeah,
I think I can't remember who did the review, but one of the sentences in it was, "This is basically a love letter to Michael Beale." And to be honest, I had absolutely no comeback on it. They weren't far wrong. I say in the book, Gerrard was the manager to me in the way that Walter Smith was the manager. He's the absolute gaffer. However, he would defer training to Michael Beale. He made no bones about that. He said it would take him 20 years to be as good as an on-pitch coach as Michael Beale was, because that's the experience Michael Beale has. He's just that person. So he's happy to defer on certain parts of it to him. Obviously, Gerrard was still the main man, and if standards weren't being met or something wasn't up to the standards that they expected, they would step in, etc. So there is a good amount about both of them, certainly in terms of that tactical methodology part. Quite a lot of the things that we see are in terms of, you remember back to the start of 2018 when we would go down to 10 men every week, near enough, and we played that 4-3-2 away to Aberdeen. I think in the first game of the season we played a kind of 4-3-2. Those type of things have been ideas that have been on Michael Beale's blogs and Michael Beale's spoken about in various coaching courses throughout the years. So the tactical side of it, I do give them both their due, but I think it's very clear from even Gerrard's own words that he sort of deferred the bulk of that to Michael Beale. So in terms of Villa, obviously he had him there for a bit. He's pretty much replaced him, I think, with the next best thing as far as Gerrard is concerned, which is Neil Critchley, who was doing very, very well at Blackpool. I think he got them promoted and he got them up. He kept them safe in the Championship on a pretty low budget. He's obviously Liverpool Academy alumni as well. So in essence, he's probably replaced them like for like in terms of a tactical coach that he knows. But you're right, it's not going great at all. I don't think Villa fans were too enthused anyway. I don't think Liverpool heroes down there are really heroes to anybody outside of Liverpool. So he was always kind of fighting an uphill battle there. And it was always going to be interesting to me to see how this kind of philosophy and formation would work when you're trying to play it mostly against teams that are probably better than you. So it's interesting to see how it's playing out.
I mean, in terms of Michael Beale, I mean, you said it was a love letter to Beale, and I mean, I can understand why. And I'm not downplaying Gerrard's influence here at all, not at all. I mean, I love the guy. I kind of fell out with him for a wee bit the way he left us, but that's gone. You know, time's healed that. I've seen a lot of people online talking about, well, Michael Beale could be the next coach, but my concern is if he does such a good job with QPR, then the next job will be a bigger job than Rangers.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. He's doing very well. I don't know the QPR budgets, etc. down there, but to have them, I think it's 6 just now, given he's a brand new coach. They've not spent any money, I don't think. I think it's mostly been free transfers and loans. Obviously, Leon Balogun came in the other week as well. To have them 6th in that league, very, very early doors down there, mind you, but to have them 6th in that league, I think is really good. And you're right, even a decent season, getting them into the playoffs, there will be clubs absolutely batting the door down. I think the most trodden route in football is players and managers going from the Championship to the Premiership, which you wouldn't necessarily think. So it's definitely the market that the EPL looks at in the first instance. And if he's doing well, he's obviously got that background. People will know that he's done all the work he's done at Rangers as well. So he's got European experience as well. It could be a case of too late, really. If he does a good job down there, it might be that he gets that gig. Yeah.
And in terms of the sort of transition, Adam, I'll make this the last question for you, and then you can go and get your Sunday night back.
Thank you.
What you're seeing now with what Gio's doing, the tactical stuff there, how do you compare that with Gerrard? And do you think that's the main problem at the moment, that the tactics it seems that he's employing seem to be too conservative, that he's maybe paying too much respect to teams domestically?
It's funny, I've kind of... So this book nearly ended me, if I'm honest, because I finished it pretty much a year to the day ago, mid-October. I finished it. First draft anyway, sent it away, and then literally about 10 days later he quit and left, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do here? Took stock, spoke to the publisher, redrafted it, put everything in the past tense, was able to add a bit more closure and depth and all that sort of stuff to it. So I've had sort of time to think about the differences between the two, I guess, in terms of what Gerrard was doing. And it wasn't perfect at all. I just felt like there was a story there from, as I said, the start to winning 55. And then anything that happened after that, people can debate about whether that devalues what we did winning 55 or whether it means that Gerrard isn't as fondly remembered as he could be. That's not what the book's about. It's not really my place to talk through that. But it's been interesting watching people switch, because you're right, what you mentioned there about forgiving him, because in the early days of Van Bronckhorst, people were falling over themselves to say how much better it was than Gerrard. I remember that. This is so flexible. This is great. We never had this before. And then it's funny how results just cloud everything, because as soon as the results change, they're like, this is too flexible. We're changing for every single opposition. We're too cautious. We're doing this. Why is that happening? So it's quite funny to watch people's sort of evolution of their opinion based on results. And I'm the same. As soon as there's a bad result, I'm like, this is terrible. This isn't working. We should change to this. We should change to that. So in terms of Van Bronckhorst, I'm not too sure, because for me, the European run kind of trumps everything. I think people will say that for last year. That's sort of trumps everything in terms of the season that we had last year and losing the league from the point that we had up, was it 6 points clear, I think we were in January. So that kind of trumps it on that side. But domestically, I think you're probably right. I think there are too many occasions. It was the same with Gerrard in the first couple of seasons where we had the handbrake on too much. We maybe didn't create enough. We were too intent on not conceding goals. And I think that's a big thing when Van Bronckhorst came in about keeping the zero. We're not really doing that anymore, but we're also not scoring enough. So in terms of the tactical play, I don't see lots that I think is amazing. I think I'm probably on record as saying I'm not quite sure we'll win the league based on the squad that we've got at the minute, albeit we all have some players coming back from injuries, etc. But I don't see the kind of repetitions and the automations and how Barisic, Kent and Kamara worked with each other under Gerrard, how Tavernier and Arfield and Roof worked with each other under Gerrard. I don't see much of that under Van Bronckhorst. There's for me, every game is unique. He's catering to an opposition, but then we're also playing in a completely unique way every single time. There's no, like I said, repetitions. The team changes so much, so difficult to get a bit of familiarity in there as well. And I think we see that and we struggle with that as well. That's not to say there's not been some good things. Obviously, PSV, Cholak scoring, Tom Lawrence coming in are things that have been really good this season. But in terms of the differences between the two, I think it is probably just that. Gerrard had his style. He would tweak it, but ultimately he wouldn't change for anybody, whereas Van Bronckhorst seems to be a lot more flexible, which has worked very well in Europe. But you could argue that we probably don't need to be that flexible in Scotland. We should really just be able to go out 7-8 times out of 10 and we've got the best players, let's go and play, take the handbrake off. So there are some differences there, but it's just interesting, that kind of full circle of opinion that's happened in basically 11 months or so.
Could I just start my cross-examination here? Just, I'm interested in Michael Beale, who's suddenly become Mick Beale since he moved to Loftus Road. No. And I keep having it's a double take every time, I'm listening to or I'm on Top Sport and somebody refers to Mick Beale, and I'm kind of like, who is this guy? It's quite a broad question or even statement, but under Gerrard, did Rangers fall into the formation that he preferred because of the players that he signed, or did he sign the specific players to play a particular formation? Because there was a few times during his tenure at Ibrox where I couldn't make up my mind whether he signed the wrong players for the right positions, so to speak, and then had to sort of mould them into performing particular roles or particular jobs. I think what you said there about Van Bronckhorst being a kind of fluid system, I thought there was a lot of fluidity as well at times with Gerrard until he got it working the way he wanted it to work.
So that's the interesting thing, is because we don't have anything before. We can't look back on Gerrard as a manager before and say, oh, he did this, he did that. Now Aston Villa, he's playing exactly the same way as he played at Rangers. So I guess we can assume that. However, in the first season, if you remember, we had obviously Katic playing as left centre-back. We had John Flanagan at left-back, mostly, although Barisic was there. We had guys like Ross McCrory or Koulibaly playing as a sort of midfield destroyer. We had wingers and Candace and Kent. I think, when was it, Morelos got sent off, didn't he, at Parkhead, and we then had to play Defoe. So he then came up with the idea of, let's move Kent and Arfield in and play them kind of behind Defoe so they can link together. So I think there's a bit of both there, Stuart. I think there's reacting to injuries, suspensions, etc., but then players coming in. For example, Stephen Davis and Glenn Kamara came in, so they're going to play different to how Ross McCrory and Koulibaly play naturally. So you play to their strengths and you then make that sort of midfield three that we had with Jack that was so strong. Barisic coming back to form, Philip Helander coming in as well. Again, those two naturally left-footed are going to play in a different way to Flanagan and Katic, kind of regardless of ability. They're going to play in a different way, so it means that you can then open up that left side and you can attack a bit better. So one of the stories or the games that I mentioned in the book is when Lennon came to Ibrox and they beat us 2-0. And their strategy that day was basically just to press Katic and Flanagan on the ball on that left-hand side. I think you remember Edouard kicked the ball right from kick-off into our corner and they just swarmed them. As soon as Barisic and Helander came into the team, that was kind of impossible then because they were both left-footed, they're comfortable on the ball, they could get forward. You could argue we've probably evolved the team so much that maybe even Barisic and Helander aren't as good on the ball as we would like them to be now, given how far we've came. So I think there's a bit of both, but certainly I think by the end or by that 55 season, he had just about perfected how he wanted that shape to look. And then it was just sort of bringing in some flexibility. You mentioned like Joe Aribo coming in, and then we'll play him left back, we'll play him right wing, or we'll play him in central midfield, or we'll play him up front. And he sort of brings flexibility on his own because he's such a clever player, could play many positions, he can do lots of different things. So I think ultimately he probably had an idea in his head of how he wanted it to look, but whether it was waiting on players coming in, whether it was waiting on the team getting up to speed in the tactics, etc., I'm not sure. That's the kind of interesting part, but I do try and explain or go into some detail on why I think things happened as we go through the chapters in the book. But ultimately it gets to that point, as we all know, what ended up as the procession to 55, where the team were banging form, everybody was contributing. Morelos chipped in, Kamar Roof chipped in, Hadji chipped in. All these players coming in, giving sort of flexibility within that structure, to me was the key thing for winning the title.
One final question, Adam. Sorry, I lied when I said earlier on. That's the last one. Like you said, like towards the end, writing the book, you just got it finished off, and then you got that word that you'd left, and you had to take it back and redraft it and put a lot of stuff in the back, the sort of past tense. Thinking of that tense, what do you think Gerrard's impact in the club has been? How will it be viewed historically? I mean, as I said earlier on, I had the hump when he left, and I was really pissed off for him. But I mean, I'm over that now, and I look at him and I think, it's him that picked us up and dusted us down and made us a big club again. That's how I view it. How do you view Gerrard's time at Rangers?
Exactly the same. I guess I'm not sure if it was a Stockholm syndrome thing from literally doing a podcast every week talking about how this was built, and then, like you said, sinking 80,000 words and probably 80,000 hours into writing about it. So I think I'm always going to look back on it quite fondly, because I think we achieved something great. But even if you look off the pitch, like you said, you think about all the staff that he brought up, you think about the way that they kitted out Ibrox to meet what Gerrard wanted in terms of an elite club. I think they knocked down, they made little player-specific rooms within the stadium, Morecambe Howie, they got up to speed, etc. Even the money coming in from Europe, I would imagine would have allowed us to do so many things in terms of infrastructure and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just too young for Souness. Well, maybe about five or 6 years too young for Souness, but to me, I don't know. I think when Souness went for Liverpool, I'm pretty sure, I've certainly heard from my dad, that reaction was mixed as well in that sense, probably similar to how you're saying about Gerrard. And I think people can feel the way that they want to feel. For me, I was obviously pretty gutted about it, but I was kind of starting to come to the opinion, just based on that start to the season last season, that maybe the 3-4 years was enough, and you want to move on and you want to recharge and you want to reset. So I hadn't quite resigned myself to it. It was still a shock, but I was maybe just starting to think maybe that next summer coming up would have been a decent little 4-year spell for him to go. So for me, I think he has to be remembered as like you said, as someone who won what I think is one of the most important titles we've ever won, bringing us back to the European stage as well. I think obviously Van Bronckhorst completely surpassed it, but again, it's that incremental thing of getting to the group stages that first year, which was unbelievable, then going past it again, and sort of bringing in that bedrock. And you think all the players that he brought in and the money that we've went on to make in terms of some of those players who have only came because of Gerrard or Beale. Really, yeah. There's quite a few of them there in terms of the Liverpool connection or even the London connection from Michael Beale. I think it will be a few years before we really realise the impact, and hopefully we go on and we're mega successful and it's just an impact that isn't as good as what we see in the next couple of years. But for me, I think it's really, really important, and I think, like you said, it kind of kicks off what we hope is a very successful 5, 10, 15 years that we've got. But he definitely got us back to where I would consider us that we deserve to be. So for that, I think I'll always be thankful for it.
Yeah, and I would agree. So where can we get this book? I'm looking at it here on Amazon. It's £10.75 on Amazon, but have you got a website where it's better?
It is £10.75 on Amazon. They don't really do me any favours, to be honest. But
so is there a better website to get it off?
Yeah, if you would like to buy it direct, I can sign it. I'm not sure if that's an incentive. There's probably going to be less unsigned than there is signed direct from me, but you can buy it on Heart and Hand website. So it's heartandhand.co.uk/Gerrard's Blueprint. If you would like to buy it, I can get it sent out. No bother at all. But Amazon, Waterstones, WH Smiths, wherever anybody gets it, the cheapest is absolutely fine.
There you go. Thank you, Adam. That's great. So that's Gerrard's Blueprint, the tactical philosophy behind Rangers' 55th title triumph by Adam Thornton there. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
No worries, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
And good luck with the book.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Cheers.
Bye-bye. Right, guys, before we go on, I'll need to mention our other partners. Hold on, I'll pull up my file here. At Forest Precision Engineering, who are a subcontract Glasgow-based engineering company. They've been a big commercial supporter of the club for many years. They also have a stunning new lounge within the hospitality area at the main stand, so you can go and visit that. If you fancy that, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, guys, on to the rest of the agenda for tonight. David, I'll come to you first. I thought it would be a good time to sort of do the season so far sort of discussion in terms of where we are and what we're doing. It's international break. It seems like an appropriate time to sort of take stock. And, it feels kind of weird because we're only 2 points off Celtic. We've qualified for the Champions League. I think if we obviously being behind Celtic's never ideal, but it's only 2 points. It's not the end of the world. I think if somebody had said that to me in the summer, come the first international break, because the first Old Firm game has been at Celtic Park, you're always sort of looking that it's going to be hard going. So you could lose that one. So if somebody said to me 2 points behind come the first international break in September, October time, and you've qualified for the Champions League, I'd have been like, well, that seems okay. That seems pretty decent. But it somehow doesn't feel like that, if you know what I mean. It feels like there's a lot of negativity around the club and about the team and about performances and stuff like that. So it seems like it's a bit of a strange position to be in.
Undoubtedly, Colin. I think think the average punter's more concerned with the style of play and how. I don't think lethargic's the right word, but there just doesn't seem to be. It doesn't seem to be a happy ship. There's something strange about the whole situation. I mean, it's, obviously losing players of the magnitude of Joe Aribo and Calvin Bassett on the form they were showing last season, it's going to be big. I can remember last season a lot of guys mentioned about Joe Aribo saying, Graham Taylor never performs in big games, but I think it's fair to say that in the game so far this season, I think Joe Aribo's absence has been keenly felt, certainly from my perspective. I think in terms of holding the ball up and allowing the team to move up as a unit, I think Joe Aribo, his contribution has been sorely felt, or the lack thereof. Certainly with Calvin Bassett, the dynamism that he had is lacking. I think it's hard to put your finger on it, Colin. I think the players, to me, they don't look happy in their work. I don't know, I could be barring up the wrong tree. People have said that they look fit. I would tend to. I don't want to look too much into it. I don't think there is maybe as dynamic from a physical perspective as they've been in the past. I don't know why you put that down to. I've heard that in pre-season that there wasn't as much running work done. There's more ball work was done. Oh, well, that's true or not, but you would like to think that the guys in Gio's team, backroom team, wouldn't stand for a lack of fitness. So, but to come to the point, I tend to agree with you that we're only 2 points off the top of the league. We've qualified for the Champions League, which is obviously one of the main targets for the season. We've done that, got the money in. Doesn't seem to have been spent enough, but I guess we'll come to that later on the show. So, look, at this juncture, would I take being 2 points off Celtic and still been in the hunt and been in the Champions League groups? Of course you would. Of course you would. I'm just more concerned about where we're going in terms of the play. That there's just something's not quite there, Colin. I don't know what it is. There's probably a multitude of factors to explain it away, but I think from a fan's perspective, I think there's legitimate concerns that still need to be addressed. From the perspective that fans need to see something more concrete going forward to think that, look, there's something better down the road. I think it's fair to say that.
It's sure. I mean, I was sitting when I was working on the agenda today. I was sort of sitting breaking it down into sort of pros and cons. And so the pros that I can think of were, Cholak's obviously come in, hit the ground running, scoring goals, and it kind of feels like finally we have someone who can push Morelos in terms of challenging him for that number 9 position. Well, Tom Lawrence has sort of hit the ground running as well, and obviously we're qualified for the Champions League. But the cons, you were like, well, there was 2 horrific performances at Celtic Park and in the Amsterdam Arena. As David's alluded to there, but sort of Gio's playing style, it's not that pretty to watch. The lack of the use of the new signings, the last few teams, it's almost like Gerrard's teams. You know what I mean? There's hardly any new signings getting played at the moment. You've had the Morelos incident where he was basically chucked out the side and told to get fit. There's rumours of other players having wee moments of indiscipline and stuff like that. As David says, it kind of feels like it's not a happy camp at the moment. So when I broke it down, there was more cons than there was pros, is probably the point I'm coming to.
Yeah, no, I would agree with what you're saying there, and I would agree equally with what some of the observations that David made there. I think there's a desperation about Rangers and their performances, and I think if they get the result, there is a relief there rather than there being a celebration. I don't see there being any kind of spring in that Rangers side or any buzz about them. They seem to be struggling to do the basics, and one of the basics I would say is that if you've got a team full of better players than the opposition, you should be winning easier than you have done. you know, I know you cannot compare like with like, otherwise there'd be a hell of a lot of rich people out there when it came to predicting football matches. But if you see what Celtic did to Dundee United and then what Rangers managed to achieve against Dundee United, you know, I know Dundee United are never going to lose or ship that amount of goals again, but it was almost like Rangers made it easy for them by maybe a lack of a lack of enthusiasm and get the job done. This team, if they score a goal or get a couple of goals, they'll take the points, and they were satisfied at that. Whereas I think, you know, as David again said earlier, I think performance level, you're looking for Rangers to turn in the kind of performance that is not based on them having to win a game to qualify for the Champions League. You're looking for them to turn in those kind of performances against the likes of Motherwell or Hibs or St John's or whoever it is they might be playing, just because they can do it, and they've not done that yet. You know, I think the positives for Rangers this season, Cholak and his goals is one. The other two are totally financially based. One, the money they made out of the sales, and I think Aribo is one of these guys who struggled to convince a lot of Rangers fans. But when you take him out of that team, you suddenly actually realise the role that he performed and what he actually did for the team. I mean, getting into the last season, a matter of 90 minutes into the season, I had already said that Bassey would be Rangers Player of the Year. And I can remember the comments coming up and saying, you don't know what you're talking about, you know, why, how could he ever play ahead of Barisic and all the rest of it? Well, I don't think some people were seeing bigger pictures then. They certainly saw it by the time he played a European final and then was transferred for, you know, a record fee away from Rangers when it was, you know, going to Ajax. So I think the other thing is that Rangers look as if they've signed one player, maybe a couple of players that have actually cut it, and everything else has been down to finances and almost, again, the relief that they've got money into the club again. What they're exactly doing with that, I'm not quite sure. But I think somewhere along the way, you have got to see that if there is going to be an improvement, it's not just in your bank balance, it's actually in your level of performance.
David, I mean, it was a strange weekend last weekend because came away from Ibrox really frustrated. You know, I'd done the sort of post-match pod with Eck, and even although we'd won, we were quite disconsolate. You know what I mean? There wasn't a happy feeling about the place. And then unexpectedly, Celtic get beat the following day at St Mirren, and all of a sudden you're like, Christ, we're only 2 points behind. But on that Sunday, I got the text from my mate saying, "Oh, Celtic will beat," and I was like, Christ almighty. And I was like, "Oh Christ, we're playing Hearts in a couple of weeks. That'll be back up to 5. You know what I mean?" I says, "We're at Tynecastle in a couple of weeks." And that's kind of where I am with Rangers at the moment. You know what I mean? Even when we get some good news and results go away, you tend to think, well, it's just a matter of time before we hand those 3 points back to Celtic and it's back to 5 points.
I can see where you're coming from. Coming away from Ibrox after playing against the United, I said to fellas in front of me for the Bristol Royal, good guys, keen students of the game, and I say they just don't look happy in their work. And there's I don't know how to put my finger on it. I've seen in the past, I think it was yourself, speaking to one of the fellas for Feyenoord. I think it was when it was just as Gio was unveiled, and I think the fella for Feyenoord said that he likes to keep the zero. But another thing that was mentioned for Gio's time in Feyenoord was that the fans were very critical of his playing style, and they used the term that he plays like a horseshoe. That the ball gets recycled in the middle of the park, goes wide, and then goes to the other side, but doesn't really come into the centre. And coming away from Ibrox last weekend, I thought, I'd seen enough in Rangers' previous performance to be cognizant of those comments, but I thought it really hit home last Saturday about there was a ponderous nature to Rangers' play against the United. When it was shuffled wide, big thing for me, and I know we'll come to play on the show, Ryan Kent.
You okay, David?
Can you hear me, Colin? I've just
Aye.
There's a blip here with the computer. I'll keep talking until I can get us back up. Ryan Kent, he looks like a different player. And I've been thinking to myself, well, how can we explain this? Is he wanting away? Is he disinterested? Is there a fallout? I just couldn't quite put my finger on it. And I was trying to think, from the player's perspective, I'm thinking, what's the reason for this? Is the tactic too rigid? And I think it probably is. I think there's probably several issues that might explain away his form, but that being one of them. Ryan Kent has scored a goal. I think I'm right in saying that his last goal for Rangers was against Red Star in the Maracana. That's a long time ago. That's back in March, and I think it's even longer since his last league goal. So, there's just something not quite right. I think that they need to click into gear. You'd be a salient point. The personnel that took the field against Napoli, it's just basically like a Steven Gerrard team, and it's your questions are legitimately asked amongst the fan base about what's happening with these new signings. We read by Neil last week. We're spending decent money on him. I know he's only 21. I know he's a young professional, generally speaking. He's came to a new country, new culture, new club. But the fact he's only made one appearance, certainly the best man was, I think it was against St Johnstone. I missed that game. I was on holiday. I'm wondering when he's going to get a run it. And I know Barnabas is obviously pressure for his place, and he's up to his game. But we're not going to see this guy. Stewart mentioned there Antonio Cholak. He's been very, very good in terms of putting chances away, but you'd like to think there's more to come for him. So, I think there's still legitimate concerns that we need to see. We need to see a bit more in terms of their desire. As Stewart rightly mentioned, that we shouldn't need, the carrot of a Champions League group stage appearance to drive the Rangers' performances. This should be, if not automatic in the league, there should be greater desire to go and put the foot in the throat early doors, especially when you score early like we did last weekend, and should be putting sides like Dundee United to the sword. Maybe I think to try and sum it up, we toiled against a side at the bottom of the league and at home, and that I've got concerns that as many Rangers fans do about where we're going in the future. But then, as you mentioned quite rightly, 24 hours later, it's amazing what a result for our chums can do to bolster the confidence again. And funnily enough, I come away from Ibrox thinking I fancy St Mirren to get a result against them tomorrow. And I'm glad we proved correct, because all this chat about them being invincible and all the usual hype about Ange Ball and blah blah blah, and I thought they're ready for a fall, and so it's proved.
And I mean the sort of the negativity, Stuart, that's been surrounding the club, it resulted in that sort of video that came out from the club in-house interview with John Bennett, and he raised a couple of points. I mean, he said he was confident that this is the strongest squad that he's seen at his time at Rangers. And something, I think we all kind of felt like that in the summer when these players were coming in. There was a feeling that it was time for this team to be broken up. They'd won 55, but there was a few players there. It was time for them to move on. That's happened. It brought quite a shift in terms of the amount of going out and coming in. But it's just not happening in terms of these players being used and then contributing in the way that they should now. John Bennett was saying that we need to give them time. It's very early. It is, but when you link it to the style of play and the results, the pressure's rising a wee bit.
Yeah, the whole thing about giving the players time, you have less time if you sign for Rangers than you have, most other clubs. You don't really get a season to bed yourself in to suddenly start turning around performances. Performances are almost demanded instantaneously, and that's whether you're the player or the manager. And you've got to try and do two things at once. One, establish yourself, and secondly, get the fans on your side. I think the the squad is stronger. However, I go back and I have not been, I've not been proven wrong in this one. And I go back to my observations right at the start during the summer about some of the signings that Rangers were making and who they were being linked with. And a year ago, I said that John McLaughlin was a decent number two to be had if he was playing, in as backup to McGregor. As far as I'm concerned, he is still a decent enough number two. But if McGregor's not there, you need to go and sign a number one, an established number one. And I think we've been found lacking there this season. And that's a concern because it's not something you're going to be able to put right until the next transfer window or maybe even next January. He might come back and prove me wrong, but I've actually got a pretty good sense when it comes to goalkeepers through the years, not just at Rangers, but, internationally and at other clubs as well. And I just think, he's at best a good goalkeeper, not a great goalkeeper. And I think any Rangers side has to have a great goalkeeper simply because, one, of how they perform, and again, on what has gone previously, but be that, in sort of, my time watching Rangers, be that what Chris Woods has done or what Andy Gorham did or what Alan McGregor has done. I think that is a level that you're looking for from a Rangers goalkeeper, and I just don't see that there just now. And and again, David is bang on the money. It was one or two of the things that he's saying there. There is almost an apathy about Rangers that even last week, and you said there, Colin, even at a time where you think you should be celebrating your biggest rivals dropping points unexpectedly, you almost look at the fixture list or fixture card to see where it could go wrong for you, rather than how you can capitalise on that. Mm-hmm. And that's a strange feeling. And I think that goes back to maybe the euphoria of reaching a European final and then winning a Scottish Cup, and then the realisation that you're going to have to do it all over again. Some players are up for that kind of challenge, and that's the difference between good players and great players, and good Rangers players and great Rangers players, that they want to go again and perform and prove themselves. And I just don't see that appetite among some of them, currently at Ibrox.
David, I mean, John Bennett also sort of admitted that he felt that the club had been poor in some of its communications with the supporters. I mean, I certainly feel, take the on-field stuff out the equation at the moment. I certainly feel a lot of unrest amongst the supporters around a lot of issues, like my Gers and all that kind of stuff, and the amount of emails I get telling me about Castore's next range, and just that feeling that the support has been monetised to the absolute limit. That's how I feel, and I must admit, over the summer there, after. This is the most disconnected I've felt for the club. I really have. There was a time through the summer I was like, you know what, I'll maybe just, sell my season ticket on this season and just go somewhere else and watch my football, because I was really struggling with the club. I must admit, just felt totally pissed off for him. And he's kind of admitted that the club have got some stuff wrong. So I suppose it's how do we fix that? Because I do think a lot of goodwill has been lost amongst the supporters, and I think the club have got a bit of work to do on that front.
How do you fix that? Well, that's a $64,000 question, Colin. I think it's important to point out that the reasons for disconnects and why we're playing, how we're playing, the finances, they're manifold and they're complex in some instances. And it's easy to jump to conclusions. It's easy to see the world in black and white instead of shades of grey. John Bennett, Vice Chairman, good blue nose. I like John, except when he kind of slips into Churchillian mode. I think we can do without that. That applies as much to Douglas Park when he decides to speak as much as John, and Dave King for that matter. But, leaving aside the off-field finances, is fans are caring about the side and the back. And what fuels the side in the park when there's, you mentioned there and Stewart mentioned there that the journey to Seville and the standard of player that Rangers have got. I've heard back to Calvin Bassett. Calvin Bassett, for the first time in years, looked the first Rangers player on form. I must caveat by saying on his current form that looked like the real deal. For the first time in arguably, decades, since Gascoigne and Laudrup, somebody that looked like top level. And at the first offer, a serious money, the board, in their wisdom, decide to cash in. There's many reasons for that, and us as fans could castigate him for cashing in. The guy could get injured tomorrow, and that asset is potentially ruined. But when you move somebody like Bassett on, you've got to replace them with players that look as though you've got to show a degree of ambition. Stewart, you mentioned there about he's more or less alluding to the fact that the Rangers were treading water. It was almost like it was like a planned stagnation. It was like, this, if we get into the Champions League, that'll get the normalisation, or will contribute, shall I say, to the increased normalisation of the club. But from the supporters' perspective, you've got to kind of meet the supporters part of the way and show a level of ambition. Now, see, signing somebody like John Suter, I mentioned at the start of the season, I thought that John Stewart deserved a shout. He's a decent player, but you can see why supporters rightly would point the finger and question his signing. We get rid of Nicola Katic, we get rid of Liam Balogun, and we brought in somebody like John Stewart who's injury prone, and Ben Davis who hasn't kicked a ball for us yet. In anger really, and by all accounts, isn't he the greatest centre half in terms of winning the ball in the air? So you question that, you think, what's going on here? They've got to, they've got to cut their costs accordingly. They've got to balance the books. I get all that, but fundamentally, as supporters, we're looking for a level of ambition. I don't think the club have shown that, and I think that there's I get that we've got to temper that ambition and say we've got to be realistic where we are and where we are financially. But there has to be a wee bit more. And it's especially exacerbated, as you guys have rightly mentioned yourself, Colin. See, when these new signings come in and they don't kick a ball and they don't even look as though they're going to be anywhere near the start 11, because you start to question it. Is the manager sign them? Is it the sporting director that signed them? The manager's maybe trying to send a message to the board saying that I don't really fancy these players. There's all these kind of unknowns and doubts start to legitimately creep in the minds of the fans. So there's just, we need more. As fans, we need to see a level of ambition in terms of the signings, and we need to see a plan and something that is coming to fruition. John Bennett's on the money and saying, he's 100% correct in saying it's too quick to judge. Of course it is. We're only a couple of months in, but to come to the side of the supporters, we've not seen enough to suggest that things are going in the right direction. Now, hopefully, once we've got a wee breather, obviously the next game's at Tynecastle, big game next Saturday, we'd like to see Rangers showing what they're about. Whether they can do that is entirely up to them.
Two parts of your question there, Colin, in terms of and what David alluded to. In terms of the signings and in terms of the communication, Rangers signed two centre-backs without anybody knowing the real reason why Balogun was allowed to be jettisoned or released. And that's a guy who, given his performance levels in the last 12 months, you really have to start asking questions, and hopefully somebody coming forward and explaining to the supporters why he was allowed to leave. Yet you bring two players in who have shown absolutely, combined, they have shown absolutely nothing compared to what that guy had shown over a season. And I think that's another one of the kind of issues that fans start to question: are we just cash cows, or have we just been asked to put our hands in our pockets for Rangers to go and follow a route or a journey that they're comfortable with, without finding out the reason why they're actually following this particular path or why they're going down this particular road?
In terms of the finances, though, Stewart, again, David kind of alluded to it there, maybe we have to be realistic. I mean, John Bennett said in this interview that he'd admitted to having sleepless nights about the financial situation at Ibrox, particularly during the COVID season, which raised my eyebrows a wee bit, because I seem to remember the message at the club at that particular point was, we're fine, we'll get through this. It's not a huge issue financially. But, I mean, do we need to be realistic financially in terms of, obviously, where Rangers were not that long ago, building the club back up again. I've had all these sort of soft loans from investors and from the guys that are on the board. Is it a case that we have to be realistic in terms of what Rangers can do in the transfer market?
I go back to the communication situation. Why is it that we are now X number of months past the reaching the Europa League final and qualification for the Champions League? Why are we so far down the road before anyone at Rangers actually then turns around and said, that 30, 35 million, 40 million that we're going to earn from the Champions League, that's just newspaper talk. The actual figure you make is something like 22 million or something like that. So let's not get carried away. I defy anybody to tell me that there were Rangers fans out there, or anybody who follows the club, who thought that qualification for the Champions League was only going to earn you 20 million plus, and you didn't make anything like you thought you had made from the Europa League. So it's almost like this economy, or this false economy, has been allowed to fester, and having arms and legs and bells and whistles added to it, to such a time as Rangers fans genuinely think there is a level of comfort within the club in terms of how the finances are going, for that suddenly you get blown away over the space of 2 interviews. For me, that's not right. That can't be right. I mean, you're suddenly, there is a, I'll use the word, I'll use the word, there is a disillusionment amongst Rangers fans just now, where I'm not quite saying they thought this was the land of milk and honey and you were going back to the days of David Murray and spending, millions and millions on backup players. No way did I ever think that was going to come around again. And I don't think we'll ever see that, despite the best plans from Aberdeen to bring in pay-per-view and all the rest of it. But the fact of the matter is that you thought that these scare stories about finances, they were well on the back burner because everything was rosy, and all of a sudden you've been knocked on your backside again, and it's suddenly like, where has this money gone? Where has it been spent on? Now, I know there's money has to be spent on infrastructure and the likes. I know that there's the running costs of a club that have to be adhered to, and the upkeep of a club, but I do think somebody should have basically, pulled their horns in a wee bit weeks and months earlier and brought a bit of a reality check to everybody to say, yeah, we're in a good place in terms of what we're doing on the pitch, but financially we could be doing better, rather than allow everybody to get carried away in their dreams and hopes and aspirations about who was going to come to Rangers, to then suddenly find themselves, only earning 50% of what they thought they'd earned.
David, final point, Stewart mentioned David Murray there. John Bennett also mentioned that, that the current board are very strong, and they have a mentality that's kind of never again in terms of, one person owning the club. And I think it's an obvious reference to Craig White. And I think David Murray might be in that sort of threshold as well. So, I mean, I don't want to go back to that. I must admit, there's all these talk of sort of takeover rumours or that sort of stuff. If there is going to be someone new coming into the club, I don't want it to be just one person again. I don't want that, because we saw what happened. I mean, David Murray was his own worst enemy, I think. He was driven by his ego. we all know what White was. White was a crook. You know, I think we need numbers in there. You know, a different ownership model that means that there's more people there, and it's not just one person doing whatever they want to do.
Yes, I think on the surface of things, Colin, that's fair comment. Don't forget, I mean, David Murray made a point quite early in his tenure that he could never run any of the committee. And the guy had a point. Look, without going too deeply into the rumour mill, which is unhelpful in a general sense, I think that this upcoming AGM, will prove to be quite enlightening to a lot of supporters. Obviously, there a couple of weeks back with Dave King's open letter to the support. Not the greatest of timing, it may just have been coincidence, but I think Dave could have maybe made a phone call to avoid that. But Dave knows what buttons to push with the supporters, as does John. That these questions are going to at least get some coverage in the run-up to the AGM. All these, how should we say, potential frictions when you've got a number of people having a say in how the club is run off the field, can either work for you or can work against you. I think it's just we're maybe at the tail end of, a like-minded group of people pulling in the same direction. I think it's came to the end of its natural cycle, and there's obviously, the time is ripe almost for the situation to move on. I'm, of a mind to kind of partially agree with you in the sense that, yes, we certainly wouldn't want to be the plaything of one, sugar daddy. I don't think that's the model that we want to follow. However, there doesn't seem to be an appetite for any fan participation, unless, the Club 1872's travails have been well documented, and the faith that the general fan base has, I should say, in that vehicle has been tarnished somewhat. Who set about tarnishing it, for what reasons, is open to debate, and I don't think this is necessarily the forum to talk about it here. But to come back to it, we need sound business people in charge of the finances, but we need a degree of oversight, and I think that has that's been somehow lost in all this, and we've placed a lot of faith in blue noses, whether they be expats or whether they be local, to run the club prudently and to satisfy the club's general level of ambition. And it remains to be seen whether that will be met going forward. There's obviously changes afoot. The club seems to be in a state of flux. There just seems to be, a lot of unknowns seem to be manifesting themselves on the pitch at the minute, Colin. And it'll be interesting to see how things pan out. And I just hope that we find a solution that, we can go forward as one without a lot of factionalism unnecessarily coming to the fore. And we can, because all that will do is to divert attentions away from the playing side, and we need to be, we need to be in the right place collectively, both as a support, as a team, as a management, as a playing staff going forward. But there would appear to be some shoots. The model maybe starting to bear fruit because the managers gave some chances to some young players, and that's maybe giving us an insight into what the model will be. But as fans, to try and answer this succinctly, we can't be going to Amsterdam and getting turned over 400 by Ajax with the greatest of respect. Ajax are either an established European club, but let's not forget, they only finished 2 points ahead of PSV Eindhoven in the Dutch League last season. And we were the better side over 2 legs, and with a couple of quality additions in lighter qualifying for the Champions League. Maybe that 4-0 reverse with that might not actually happen, but that's a side show. We need to be pulling in the one direction. I think that's the best thing to end on.
Right, guys, before we talk about the final thing tonight, I have to mention Zenith Coins. Our other partners, they produce the official Rangers Club coin. Each gold-plated coin has a unique serial number engraved on the outer rim and comes complete with a Rangers presentation box and certificate of authenticity. Famous Rangers fans such as Alan McCoy, who we're about to talk about, Derek Johnson, Marvin Andrews, Tom Stolman, Gordon Ramsay, all own one of these collections. Zenith have also produced a 150th anniversary collection limited to 1,872 sets worldwide, releasing small batches covering 5 iconic milestones, which is the founding fathers, Ibrox Stadium, the 72 Cup Winners' Cup in Barcelona, 9 in a row, and the 55th league title. You'll get more info on that at www.zenithcoins.com. Right, guys, final topic for tonight, and it's Super Ali. We thought we would have a wee chat about him since he's 60-year-old. Stunned, and not a good sign. You know, Bruce Springsteen was 73 last week. McCoy has turned 60. Liam Gallagher's turned 50. You know, all my heroes are getting old, and it's not much fun. So Stewart, I thought we would have a good chat about him. You know, I mean, obviously as a player, he was fucking different gravy, really, wasn't he? Super Ali. Had a difficult start to his Rangers career. You know, when he first arrived, but you know, 2 golden boots, umpteen league titles, umpteen 100 goals, just everything you want for a Rangers number 9.
Yeah. Ideal start, scoring against Celtic after 33 seconds.
Yeah.
And then forming a partnership up front with Sandy Clark, lovingly known as Sandra and Alison, for a good wee while, because it just did not hit it off or perform to the levels that they could have done. The threat of going to Cardiff City on loan by Jock Wallace, completely spurious, just to try and G him up a bit, and then a hat-trick against Celtic, a League Cup final. And from there on, he never looked back. And, you know, in terms of goal scoring, the number of goals, the types of goals, the importance of the goals, I probably will never see anybody like him again in my lifetime, because he just did it and he got it. And every goal, he treated every goal like it was his first goal.
Yeah.
And that's what mattered. You know, it was like, if he scored X number of goals by Christmas, he then wanted to score the same again before the end of the season. If he scored once, you know, last week, he wanted to score twice next week. And I think, you know, just that enthusiasm, if you could have taken that and bottled it and given it to different generations of Rangers players since then, I think, you know, they would have quenched their thirst on it, because it would have driven them, it had been the fuel that would have taken them on a different level. And again, during his Rangers career, he scored great goals, injured, was almost like written off, and then comes back and scores a boy's own goal against Hibs to win the League Cup, and away he goes again. You know, this time, you know, then in partnership with, like, say, Gascoigne, when Gascoigne arrived, and you just have to marvel at the levels that he achieved and the longevity. You know, 15 years at Rangers and 355 goals. You know, you work that out in your head, and it's like, did he score that many every season? Well, he scored more than that in a few seasons, but a fantastic servant. And I don't think anybody of a certain generation can remember everything that Rangers achieved without putting, you know, McCoy's probably at least 5 or 6 or 7 of his goals been in the top 10 in any given year that Rangers were performing at that level.
David, I mean, I don't really want to talk too much about his managerial career, because obviously it didn't go too well. You know, it was a traumatic time at the club. I mean, you could probably say he was a wee bit unlucky. Probably the right man at the wrong time. Everything that happened. There was a time I really lost a lot of love for McCoist. I think the night when we lost that cup final to Wraith Rovers, and there was the images coming out of him on the karaoke and all that kind of stuff. There was a long time I was like, you know what, Ali, I'm done with you. And there was a time when I never ever thought that would happen because, like, as I said, he signed for the club when I was 10. He was still there when I was like my mid to late 20s. Apart from Davy Cooper, who was my ultimate hero. But during that time, I couldn't be arsed with him. You know what I mean? I just think I was pissed off for the way that things were going at the club and I expected more from him. But there's also the other side of the stuff that McCoy's done, around the important sort of part that he played in ensuring that, we weren't stripped of titles and certain things that other clubs and other organisations wanted to happen. He made sure those things didn't happen. He probably was the club at one point, the only one standing in our corner.
I was certainly there. Don't forget Sandy Jardine was at his back, Colin. Yeah. But I mean, to try and sum up my feelings about McCoist, well, he's one of us, so that's he'll do for me where that's concerned. He was definitely in the club's corner during when that 5-year agreement was struck. I'll be forever indebted to him because if he hadn't been there, I'm quite sure that Charles Green would have acquiesced to Peter Lawwell's demands and would have struck the title. So I'll be forever thankful that he was there, and whatever he did, however big or small it was, he obviously played his part. I think where his managerial tenure's concerned, I think it's too easy to jump to conclusions. Don't get me wrong, I'm totally 100% with you with regards to poor results like Wraith Rovers and there's a few others in there. Obviously down at Palmerston when he finally got his they get the bad news, but I think that there's so much that must have been going in the background with the club then. That I think it's understated how much he tried to hold it all together. And this, it's all very well, saying that he's a class. He knows when to laugh and joke. He's obviously hiding things. Stewart was talking of his career there, his playing career. I mean, when he was talking there, the image that came into my mind there was the judge when Souness tried to sack him, and he was determined. He wasn't going to let somebody from Edinburgh chase him away from his dream, and he stayed there, and he stayed in power, and he saw off Graham Souness, and he went on to become one of the most decorated players in the club's history, the leading goal scorer, and that's testament to his character. Didn't happen for him. The managerial side, but you can't have everything in life, Colin. I mean, the guy,
Well, he pretty much got everything else, though, didn't he? You know what I
mean? Well, he'd achieved enough in a playing sense that that he couldn't possibly, go on and become a top level manager. Could he really? I mean, it's like, it's like Alec Ferguson. Had a modest career.
Yeah.
And went on to become a class manager, one of the best managers, certainly one of the best managers Britain's ever produced. So maybe just the odds. Ali had used up all his favours with the football and gods early on. But a tremendous goal scorer. I can mind quite vividly being in the main stand with my old man when the Colin was telling him where to go. The Dundee
game. The Dundee game, yeah.
And other games as well, don't forget me, it wasn't just that game. And he turned it around. You mentioned the 84 League Cup final. That game sticks in the memory because it was the first game, I think I'm right in saying this, that ever played with Delta Balls, or Deltas. And he played superbly that day. And Ali Blue knows his name he'll forever be a club legend. So happy birthday, Ali.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there was a time when I was struggling with him, I must admit, when he was a manager, but time's a great healer, and he's super in my eyes again, there's no doubt about it. So guys, looking at the time, I think we'll call time there. So a big thanks to Stewart and David for their contributions there, and obviously to Adam earlier on, giving us a wee insight to his book. So get on that. You'll get it on Amazon or the Hartman website. We were live tonight. We're live on a Sunday night, but the show will be available to download and stream on a variety of platforms from tomorrow, including Acast, iTunes, YouTube, Castbox, Stitcher, Spotify, all your usual places, guys. I will have a preview show out on Friday night for the Hearts game next Saturday, and obviously we'll have the show next Sunday night at 9:30 as well. So in the meantime, get yourself onto the Gersnet website and forums at www.gersnet.co.uk. And until next week, bye for now.